This is Mark, Hay Creek Stock Farm. This is a mixture of Sorghum Sudan. This is the Sorghum Sudan. It's about waist plus high, waist to sternum high. Brown midrib variety. It's more palatable to the cattle. And this is a weed. These are iron and clay cowpeas, which are supposed to add protein to the feed value as well as nitrogen to the soil, fueling the growth of the Sorghum Sudan. And there's also another legume fixer, or a nitrogen fixer. It's called Hemp, which is kind of just exotic, just beginning to be used. It does the same kind of thing as the peas, adds nitrogen to the soil. So the secret to efficient utilization of the cattle by this stuff is to get a fence so that they don't simply trample it all down. You can just feed them small segments of it at a time. And to do that, we're out here today cutting some lanes in it with this device. It's a BCS, kind of a European style two-wheel tractor. It has both, you can be configured in both forward and reverse directions. So in the forward direction, when it's going in this direction, you can mount a rear-mounted tiller on that end. In the reverse direction, which you've got it configured now, and the whole handlebar pivots around so you can control it from either direction, one at a time. But we've got a meter-wide sickle bar mower on that to accomplish this job. So it cuts a nice swath in there. There's plenty of room for the fence. You can see what the problem is. Once you cut it, the stems are fairly weak because they've all been supported by the surrounding stock, so they do tend to flop into the cut, which is somewhat of a problem. But it's, in the end, if it gets real bad, if they're exceedingly high, you can cut two swaths side by side, and that pretty much solves the problem. But in that case, you end up with a lot of material on the ground drying that the cattle might not utilize that well. So we're going to start this thing up and cut a couple of lanes. We got some flags over there marking the post divisions that we want our cross fencing to line up with. They're up high enough. They're like 5-foot fiberglass rods with a sawdust plastic flag taped to the top, so we can see over the tops of the forage here. And also there's a crown to the field, so it's really hard to see all the way from one side to the other without those rays. So we're going to use those as targets to guide ourselves here. We just got a couple little segments to cut that somehow, because this curve of the field makes kind of a sweeping curve. So on the outside of the curve, there's actually supposed to be more segments than the inside. That's what we're cutting right now. Is the two little segments that are required to complete the curve. So here goes. There's to it. Here's the half-inch fiberglass post by 5 foot high I put in at each intersection, so I can section off half of the field at a time by making kind of a box corner. So that takes the fiberglass rod, the heavier post to take that side thrust from the corner. So that's, otherwise they're just step-in pigtail steel posts. So that's the end of that process. This is the center lane dividing the approximately 200 foot wide field into two 100-foot swaths, so it's easier to section it up into small sections. It doesn't require as long a runs of fencing to do it this way as it would to take 200-foot wide slices, very narrow 200-foot wide slices. Less chance of the fence being shorted out. In this particular spot, it's kind of crazy because there's some extra little pie-shaped segments on the downhill side to account for the curve to make up the distance. So I try to keep them regularly spaced with the endpoints on the fixed fence posts at either end, which are approximately 50 feet apart. So they're getting roughly 5,000 square feet each day, each move. So this is how it's sectioned up. This is what keeps them from advancing into the next segment as an electric poly wire. And I've got a charger, a fence energizer monitoring system. It's a light, a flashing light that signifies that the voltage on the fence is in good shape. You get too much loading like this, stalks falling on the wire and shorting it to ground, that light will stop flashing, gives you a heads up. You look for what's wrong. That could be anywhere on the fence line, the perimeter or these division fences. Even the trees along the north line, you get a branch down that's shorting one wire into the other, will do that very effectively. So you allow them to test a wire with low voltage on it by reaching under the wire. They'll eventually, to get a plant they can barely reach, they'll soon figure out that there's no voltage on, or low voltage. They're not getting any shock, so they'll be emboldened to sneak under the wire into a new patch. That's to be avoided. Morning, this is Mark, Hay Creek Stock Farm, haycreek.net. We're heading out today to kind of fill in some gaps in the footage from yesterday when we ended up taking the time-lapse shot. Just make things a little clearer for everybody. This is a little flashing light for the energizer that I mentioned yesterday. The power runs from the box over here where the energizer is housed through the fourth wire from the ground, which meets up with this fence here. Just powers the fence alone and then runs underground through this underground wire across the gate opening to this post, and is switched. Plus there's this indicator light, and when the voltage is sufficiently high, the spark will actually jump across a gap inside this little housing right here and activate the light. So you can tell that the whole system isn't shorted out. And you can see like there's vegetation loading the fourth wire. It's, you know, partly burn away, but you know, on a dewy morning like this, there's always some load due to something, even if it's dry, normally touching it. So we can depower the fence with this switch. The light goes off, indicating that there's no charge on the fence, and we can go and comfortably work with the wires. The cattle don't pick up on the idea that I switched it off for my own benefit. It's a secret I haven't divulged to them yet. Dog accompaniment. This now is the day after the time lapse of them, of the feeder 1-year-old and 2-year-old mixed herd, finishing off a small segment of the BMR Sorghum Sudan, Hemp, and cowpea mixture, 3-way mixture. So we'll see how they did close up and give them access to a new section. This is the wire that keeps them in this part of the field and allows passage by the end of the field to access other fields for haying or other work. Morning. Your flies like the sunny side of you. Yep. Nice cockleburrs. They're very becoming. Water looking good. The rocks help prevent them from tipping it over. The water gets shut off overnight, so the leaks in it don't contribute to huge energy losses. Having to repump the leaked water. So this wire in front of us, this is what they grazed yesterday. This is what the time lapse recorded, and this is the end result of that whole process. Actually, here was the old
line, you can see it's more heavily grazed than the interior. It was just a small pie-shaped piece yesterday. But even so, they wasted a lot of it. You can see it's trampled. They've gotten it dirty. Once it gets dirty like that, they won't go back and consume it. They're just being wasteful. Short-sighted. But here is the wire that prevented them from going forward. There's the tripod where the camera was mounted yesterday. So the time lapse you saw was them approaching this wire. And today we're going to move a wire, I'm not sure which one it is yet, and allow them access to the next segment. Make sure I have a wire beyond this and don't let them into the whole field at once. See which one works out best for today's advance. It looks to me like, yeah, the one to the north is going to be the best advance for today. You can see the reel and the wire terminates here, so it just takes this little L jog. So that would be the one to remove for today. So we'll get on with that and let them in. Okay, the wire is now removed. Here's a photo of the cheap consumer house owner grade cord reels that work better for poly wire than in these short lengths anyways, 200 feet or so. 200 feet of wire. Doesn't even fill the reel to 2/3 capacity, but they're lightweight. You throw them around, they don't break. You can throw them over the top of a post, completely non-conductive. So this is the cattle after their new move. They're digging in. It's wet, overnight dew. We'll go through the next lane down the wire that's already preset the next lane. Make sure there isn't a lot of fallen stalks on them. Clear it off so that it's got a good chance of keeping them contained. This is the same day as the feeder move on the other end. It's the same field. The two groups of cattle are working either end of it. Get through it faster, prevent it from getting over mature. We're at a crossroads right now, approaching the cow-calf group on the east end of the field. So we're doing the dog park walk here. Try to stay dry. Not a good day to be wearing jeans. Everything's wet. Somebody's sneaking underneath the wire up there. It's a calf. An opportunistic calf. He doesn't give anyone else that idea. The power is off. The Energizer power is off at the switch, so he's not getting a shock. It's actually a she, a little heifer calf. Slippery footing. You stay out of there. It must have passed the reel. Oh yeah, it's at the other end. So we'll unreel this L-shaped piece of wire around this little patch here, and they'll pour into there, have access to it. This is a very delicate operation. The cows are very aggressive about getting through when you crack that wire. It's a big competition for them. So we're going to have to put the camera down. So the wire's down. Cows and calves are well into their block of feed. Do a little pass the sunny, a little pass around the sunny side of it and see them better. It's a gorgeous quiet morning. I think it's September 5th, Saturday. It's okay. You got permission to be in there. They're naturally guilty. They have naturally guilty consciences. They always think that you suspect they're not where they're there. They are where they're not supposed to be. But they're happy when they're in the feed. Number 175 is a real, with the horns, she's a real boss come wintertime. She uses those horns to keep others away from her feed. The horns are kind of a residual from some of the original members of the cow herd that were Scottish Highlands. And then some of the shorthorn bulls aren't as genetically polled as others, so the horns can kind of creep back in. Even though this bull is not displaying horns, he can pass on a recessive gene for horns. That's all for today. Mark, Hay Creek Stock Farm, haycreek.net.